I find myself too sometimes though, where I'm like, yeah, I do feel like I have many friends, but I don't see all of them in person all the time. I see most of them in a virtual space.
You are listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm joined by my two friends, Amanda and Tyler. Together, we are a trio of coaches coming together to explore life's biggest topics. Each episode, we hold true to our name, Come As You Are, by showing up and just hitting record. Whatever we bring to the table that week is what we talk about. No scripts, no planning, just real and raw conversations. Our mission is to create a space where vulnerability and authenticity take center stage. And we believe in the power of deep conversations and soulful connections. So welcome to the show. We are happy that you're here, and we invite you now to just sit back, relax, and enjoy today's conversation.
We were just talking before we started recording, and we were like, we don't even know who we're talking about yet. And it's been this like evolutionary progress, because when we started this project, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have a title for the show. And now we were sitting here going, who's our audience? Who's listening? So if you are listening, let us know in the comments who you are. Where'd you come from? How'd you get here? Because we're curious. We're just here showing up, and we're having these conversations, and we're hoping to find some connection out there in the digital space. And that kind of leads us into our conversation for today, which is all around connection and friendships, and how, even relationships now, how they've all kind of changed, and they've grown, and they've become this weird like digital space where we find connection with people from all over the world, but we somehow kind of feel disconnected in real life, because I think for me at least, my in-person circle, people that I see in real life, is so much smaller than the vast amount of connections that I've made online, and the friendships that have blossomed because of technology. And so we were just talking about that, and that was a conversation that came up in therapy. So we were like, hey, let's make that the topic of today's episode. So I want to kick it over to you two. What do you guys think about when you think about this idea of connection and technology, and how we've how the digital world is changing how we build relationships?
We're just going to go right into it, aren't we?
Absolutely, as we always do.
In true fashion. I think for me, really, the biggest part about that is kind of like what you were already saying, is that, I do feel like I am so connected, right? I have so many friends. And for me, something that's really important is to be aligned with like-minded people. And so I see myself in so many spaces, but when I say that, it's online spaces. And when I sit back and think, I have an incredible group of friends, and we were laughing before saying we have in-person friends, and then there's the online friends. There almost has to be this distinction, and they're all my friends and I love them all equally. But I think that when I'm looking at, well, how many people do I hang out with in real life as opposed to online, I'm in Zoom rooms so often. Look, here we are now in a Zoom room, and the three of us have never actually met in person, but I feel like we have such a beautiful connection. And so I guess I don't even know, how do we, I don't know. My first thoughts are I feel like I'm so blessed to have so many incredible people in my life. But as I'm sharing that, it's they're not really physically, all of them, they're not all physically in my life. They're virtual. And I know I'm not the only one that shares this experience, right? I kind of think that's what led us into this conversation. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thought.
I think it is so intriguing and interesting to talk about this, because there is a difference in energy when we come together here in this kind of like virtual room versus meeting people in person. Especially like during the pandemic, I have experienced this for myself, that all of a sudden I had so much more virtual conversations overall. I also was really blessed by kind of putting together a group of friends during the pandemic. This was a regular like friendship love story. We met on the internet and we became this group of 12 people, which, you know, for me being an INFJ super introverted person, 12 is like, what? Are you bananas? Super a lot of people for me to be dealing with at the same time, but we made it work. It's been a beautiful 2 years. We just had our 2-year anniversary, so yay! I'm so happy that we are still together with the 12 of us. And I've noticed this, that all of those conversations that we were having virtually, because the 12 of us, we are scattered across 3 different countries. Luckily I'm living somewhat in the same city with 3 of the people, but the rest is really scattered. So we really would have to travel to see each other. And we did that now a couple of times here and there. And the virtual meetings that we are having, I've kind of noticed that if we were to meet in person, if we were all in the same space, I don't think we would meet up as often. I'm definitely not the only introvert in that group, for sure. I think most of us are introverts. And as introverts, we do have to be mindful of our energy, especially when it comes to social situations. You know, we can get so excited when we meet someone one-on-one or in smaller groups, and we can have the time of our lives, but there will come a time when our social batteries just run out and we need to, you know, kind of like go and like rent a cabin in the woods for 2 days to recover from all of this socializing, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. And so I think it's for me such a interesting discovery overall, that when I connect virtually with people, my energy doesn't go down as much. Like I can have those kinds of virtual conversations actually, I don't know, so many times a week, but meeting up with people several times a week wouldn't be possible for me. Like I would be so drained. So that's something that kind of like the pandemic and also this whole flood of, you know, more virtual meetings was brought with the pandemic, this insight that, isn't that interesting? Like I actually can have more interactions. And I'm curious to hear from the both of you if this is true for you guys as well. But there is something definitely, and I think this is what you were talking to, Amanda, there's something missing, right? Like when you're not meeting in person, when you're online, there is a different kind of energy. And I'm not saying that one or the other is better or worse, not at all. Just that it's different. It feels different. And I don't know, do you want to explore like how it's different, or maybe you guys have some ideas of, I mean, there's obviously the physical aspect, but maybe there's more than that. Maybe there's more. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, already my brain's like firing in all different directions. So I know this is going to turn out to be a really cool conversation. I think when Stephanie, when you were just sharing about how like you can get into these virtual rooms and you can talk to 12 different people and it doesn't drain you, you know, it doesn't deplete your energy like maybe being in a group of 12 people like in real life. And I was like, yeah, that's totally me. Like I do group coaching calls, and like on Wednesday I had 30 people in the group coaching call, which was like the highest number of people that I've had on a group coaching call before. So I was really excited about that. But I was like, I was only focused on the people who had submitted questions and I was coaching them. And it was like this collective energy was in the room, but it was like the screen was not, for me, it was like the screen was blocking all of the energy. You know what I mean? And so like, I mean, this is for me, like this is what's coming up for me is like I'm an empath and I really feel energy. And I think we all probably have those, empath energies because we're coaches and like we feel and read into energy. And I think this is why, at least for me, why I feel like I've been kind of thriving in the digital space is because the screen acts as like a natural barrier where like I don't feel like I carry as much energy away from a digital conversation than I do like in person, because like when I'm with my friends in person and we're having brunch and we're playing games or something like that, it's up to like 10 people in one room, like with 10 different energies, and there's like a collective energy that comes from that can either, at least for me, be extremely like energizing and like so empowering. And I think this is like what happens when we go to like retreats and we go to like the conventions and we go to like the workshops and the 3-day live events and things like that, is like it's all the same types of minds coming together in one room, and it builds this like really powerful like collective energy. And so we leave like buzzing. Like I always feel like I come out of a retreat like high off of life. Like it's the most magical feeling. And then it wears off like 12 hours later and you kind of get back to like real life and things like that. But I think for me, what I was talking to my therapist this week about was the changing dynamics of friendships, and when the energy starts to shift from like a positive experience to a negative experience, and like recognizing that, okay, maybe the friendship dynamics are changing and maybe I need to make some changes and like take more time with myself and save some of that energy for more more every once in a while occasions versus like we're going to do something every single weekend and we're always going to be together and things like that. But like that's for me, like again, being an empath, like I'm a very energetic, like in tuned being. And so when I'm in real life with somebody, like there's a collective energy there, and it's either positive or negative depending on all the different factors. But like i think that's the differentiator. I think I butchered that word, factor. I think that's like the thing that makes the difference, is like the digital space, you're like blocked by a screen, which for me, it preserves a lot of my energy, and that can be a really safe space. But at the same time, it doesn't nourish me as much as like in a room with like-minded people, and we're brainstorming and we're collaborating and we're creating together. And so it's like there's pros and cons to both spaces.
Like anything else, right? There's always the pros and the cons. And I think we're just highlighting that in the space of looking at our connections and just looking at, okay, what does it look like in the virtual space and what does it look like in the real life space? And I still think it's hilarious that we're like actually making this distinction, right? Because I find myself too sometimes though, where I'm like, yeah, I do feel like I have many friends, but I don't see all of them in person all the time. I see most of them in a virtual space. And I'm okay with that because I love the people that I hang out with, and I love that you two are part of it. But that I think in going to this like the more positive side of it is even just like how much bigger our networks get to be, how much bigger they are when, I mean, seriously, look at us. We're in 3 different countries. Like, that wouldn't happen walking down the street. So that, I think that's a huge positive, is that we do get to connect with others. And I think a big part of that for me anyways, personally, is knowing that I get to connect with other like-minded people, because a lot of the people in my personal life, I love them to death. They're great people, but we don't necessarily share all the same beliefs, or we're not all on the same wavelength. Like, there's certain things that I have very strong beliefs about things, and others in my life are like, well, that's silly. Like, they just, and it's fine. We can still be friends. We can still enjoy time together. But I think too, you were highlighting, Tyler, how powerful it is when we are in a space that we have this collective energy, and this, going on the retreats, like, you have a space where it's a bunch of like-minded people. And I think it's so interesting when we look at that, and maybe this is because I have an 8-year-old, and so we go to the park and everyone at the park is his friend. But then you have adults, and I see this all the time, like, even the parents are bringing their children to the park and they're sort of just like standing back, and I'm like, oh, hello, like, hi. But we don't talk, we don't have conversation. It's like, it's so easy for kids to make friends and interact, whereas adults, you get into a room and everyone's kind of like, oh, okay, like, unless there is this, we're walking into a retreat, everyone in this space is like-minded. And so the judgment, that part of like the judgments that we hold, yeah, that's what really comes up for me when like, what is the difference, right? What is the difference between a kid at the park and an adult in like Starbucks? I don't know, right? Like, we're all in the same space, and kids are so easy to talk to each other, make friends, and they're having a great time. Whereas adults, we're very, what's the word I'm looking for? Closed off, or I don't know what Tyler, I see you like, go. there is this, right?
He's like exploding.
Yeah.
There is. And I mean, it reminds me of being little and going to Chuck E. Cheese, and playing the games and playing in the ball pit and all of that grossness that we did when we were little. And they're like to me, there's like a sense of innocence there that they don't have the boundaries, they don't have like the pressures. And I'm going there because that's just who I am. Like, they don't have the pressures of society like boxing them in and trying to get them to fit into different spaces and classes and all of these kind of things. And it's like adults, we're like conditioned to oh, like the lawyer can't talk to the teacher or something like that, because like, what are we going to have in common? And like, it's just kind of like this built-in belief that of like social circles of like when you age, when you grow up, you kind of have to like find yourself in these specific social circles, and they're not allowed to mix. They can coexist, but they're just not allowed to mix. And so I see this all the time. We just box ourselves in to these like spaces, and we're like, okay, these are the only types of people that we get to hang out with. And it's like, why? Why can't we, talk to this person and talk to that person? And like, my grandma is great at this. We'll go out to dinner and she does not care who she's talking to. Like, she will talk to the table over here and the people at the bar, and like, it's like, and it's like, and it's almost childlike to watch her do it. And my aunt and uncle, they get very embarrassed and they're like, don't stop talking to people. And it's like, why is it such a bad thing to like talk to somebody, to open up a conversation, to say, hey, how are you? My name's Tyler. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, they're going to ignore you. They're going to say, leave me alone. Like, okay, cool. I'll leave you alone. Sorry, but like, I'm like guilty of this myself. I'm like having this like spiritual download moment of like, we don't go out and make friends as adults, and we were talking about this before we started the episode. It's like I'm approaching 30, this year, and I'm like thinking of like going out and trying to make more friends, and I'm like, this is the scariest thing ever. But yet your 8-year-old goes to the park and comes home with like five best friends, and it's like, can it really be that simple, I guess, is my question.
I think we overcomplicate it. And I think that like looking at, okay, not only just the kids, but then you also go to like at both ends of the age spectrum, right? We have the young kids and we have the elderly. Because for me, it's the same thing. I see it all the time. I even get it. And I'm that person that goes to the grocery store and I have like the person in front of me in line telling me their life story, right? But it's often you see these elderly people who are just chatting about, they're talking to everybody. So I think this is why I was trying to get at there's this judgment, like, and like you were saying, Tyler, the box, like we're putting ourselves in. It's that we're suddenly like, especially in the parenting world, like there's so much judgment, like, oh, your kid's having a tantrum, or oh, you talk to your kid like this, or you do this, or you do that. Like it's, and I mean, it's everywhere. But when I think of parents, if any of you parents are out there listening, like give me a hell yes in the comments, because it is 100%. Like it's so true. Like this is where mom guilt is born, right? It's all from these judgments of other people, and then we put them onto ourselves. And all of us are guilty of this. It's not just moms. We all have guilt about just being authentic, just showing up as ourselves. And that part, I think, is what feels kind of scary. It's like, am I going to put myself out there and someone's going to be like, well, she's weird, like, or have some other form of judgment about us. And whereas when we're young, the innocence, we don't even really know that exists. And then as elderly people, it's like, we just don't even care anymore. Like, it just doesn't even matter. Like they have all the wisdom, and they realize that it actually doesn't matter. What other people think about you does not matter. And quite frankly, it's none of your business. So that's my 2 cents. That's my little rant.
So all of you listening and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so me. I'm so hard on myself. I'm so judging myself all the time. I'm so afraid to mess up. So I don't even do anything. I don't approach the people. I don't speak up or whatever. Please join the club of recovering people pleaser.
Yes.
Club, right? Like we're all in it, doing our best to. And this is such a big topic, and especially when it comes to judgment. I mean, we can debunk this in really like 2 sentences or so, because when we judge ourselves, essentially we're afraid. There's fear, right? And this fear voice that we all have can be so mean, right? It can be so mean. Like, you're not smart enough to make friends, or you're not whatever socialized enough to make friends, or who's gonna want to be friends with you, or you're too make friends, you're whatever, right? Like this voice can be so mean. And I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is that when this fear voice is so loud for us, this voice of judgment, then there's probably a bit of misalignment within ourselves. Hala, you mentioned this earlier. I thought it was so beautiful. You mentioned talking about, the friends, and you feel like you are, there's not so much energy that you're taking away from those meetings, from those like getting togethers with your friends, that it's maybe more draining than energy giving, or those meetings create more negative than positive energy for you. And you said such a key sentence there. I'm so glad I can pick it up now. You said, maybe I want to spend some more time with myself. So you didn't go down the route of saying, oh, I need new friends. but you said, hey, I need to spend some time with myself. And I think when we look at this voice of judgment that we all have, this is the answer, to take some time for yourself. Hey, where's this mean voice living inside of me? And when was it born? Probably some decades ago for all of us, when we were actually kids, right? When we started to question, when we started to be corrected in our behavior of what is okay, what is not okay to do in terms of socializing. This is when the voice was basically born. And we need to go back to that. And we need to figure out a way to say to that voice, you know what, I hear you. And also, this might not be true for me anymore, because something that you have done or something that was told to you 20 years ago was probably so outdated. But we still have those voices in our heads because they're trying to protect us. And I'm trying so hard right now not to drift into like the deeper part of this, but
yeah,
it's hard. It's like
we could be here forever.
I know it's exactly, Amanda.
We're like right there, and I can feel it like teetering. It's like, oh my gosh,
jump over the cliff or what? Maybe we'll save that for next time.
Yes, I think so. So this is just like a bit of a piece of advice, I think, for today, for all of you listening and watching this, that when you have this voice of judgment, then it might be time to do a little bit of self-inquiry. What's there? How often does that voice come up? When does it come up? With what kind of people? And what is it saying? And then to just question that. That's the only thing, right? When the voice comes up and it tells you you're ugly, or who are you to go over there and talk to those people, something like this, question that. Question that. And if you have those negative thoughts, you can also just turn them around and see if you can find a truth that works for you today.
I love that. And the biggest ninja trick I love with this one, this voice of judgment, is name it. Give your voice of judgment a name, something other than your own, whatever the name is, because then you're separating it from yourself. And I love what you're saying, Stephanie, and like getting into this dialogue with it, because then when you're having that dialogue, right, then you can say like, hey, listen up. That's, I don't know, Bob, his voice of judgment's name's Bob, right? It's like, hey, Bob, like, that's not true. That's not true for me. And so we're able to actually have that dialogue, and from something separate from ourselves, and we can separate it. And when it comes up, then we're like, oh, hey, Bob. And I think the biggest analogy I love about that one is that, I mean, Bob wears this camouflage of like being our best friend. Our voice of judgment is there. And you were saying exactly that, Stephanie, right? Of like this, it wants to keep us safe. And she's like, thanks, Bob. Thanks for trying to keep me safe, but I'm okay. And I love the analogy of like driving a car. So if we're driving in the car, Bob can be in the back seat, but he's not going to be driving the car. He's not allowed to drive, but he's allowed to sit in the back seat and we can chat and, you know, all of the things, but he cannot drive because he doesn't have a driver's license. Just not allowed to drive. And I think this can be a huge like shift in how we approach situations or how we have these conversations within ourselves. I think this is super, super important to remember.
I think like, wow, I'm like sitting here like thinking about all of this and like reflecting on myself and my own journey over the last decade that I've been going down this personal development path. And which is crazy to think that it's been a decade. Like I've been doing this for like over a decade now, 11 years. I started, you know, down this path of self-discovery. And one of the things, you know, we talk about friendship and we talk about, you know, we talk about external friendship, but we never talk about internal friendship and like how we're being to ourselves, which is what like Stephanie brought up, and then Amanda like continued this conversation. And for me, what I discovered was, and I think this is common for most of us, is that we are our worst critics.
Mm.
Like we are our worst enemies. We are like the bullies to ourselves. And I'm always reminding myself to, hey, be your best friend. Be your best friend. Like, like don't let the negative thoughts, don't let like the insecurities, don't let like all of the ickiness that comes up when you're like your worst enemy like control you. Create a best friend in your mind, as Amanda was saying about putting Bob in the back seat. Like put your best friend in the passenger seat, and have like have the negative voice in the back, who's trying to keep you small, who's trying to keep you, I mean, it's really trying to keep you safe, which is kind of a beautiful thing. But it's also recognizing that you are safe now and that you can still go and grow and like, still go do the things and make the friends and like, go after the desires that you have in life. And like that only comes when you allow the inner you to be your best friend, to be the cheerleader, to be the supporter, to be the, the person that you lean on. And, that's a big reflection of like self-love. And I think that's something that we just don't do enough of as humans, because we're conditioned, I think, to believe that there's something wrong with us and there's something missing or, whatnot. And like, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last decade is, you know, you have to be your best friend. You have to be like your own best friend. You can have an external best friend. You can have somebody in real life who's your like best friend, that you lean on and, that go-to friend. But like at the end of the day, like this is you on your journey. This is you going through life. And like you have to cheerlead yourself. You have to be the one that supports you. You have to be the one that has to live with the actions or inactions that you take or don't take. And like you're not going to go anywhere if you're constantly criticizing yourself and being mean to yourself. And so, I've been on a mission of like learning how to practice kindness and practice love and forgiveness and grace and all of those warm fuzzy words. And like it makes a difference. It really does change. It allows you to hold the space to self-reflect and to really ask yourself, like are the relationships that I'm currently in, are they the best relationships for me? Or what am I missing? And it's not a selfish thing to want to get new friends or to, make some changes in your life. Because that was something that I was struggling with, was like, am I being selfish because I want to go out and make some new friends? Like, should I not be happy with the ones that I have? And it's like, I love those people. They're my gal pals. They're my, go-to brunch. We call ourselves the brunch bitches. Like it's fun. Like we have like a good time together, but like there's also still a part of me that wants and is longing for, you know, some more dreamers, visionaries, people that have, higher goals. And that's not selfish, and I think that's a big point, is that when you want to go make new friends, when you want to make some changes in your life, it's not selfish to do that.
I think this whole topic of friendship and relationships overall, I mean, this is so rich, right? And as always, we are sitting here, and as we are coming to an end, we are all thinking, gee, I want to talk about this for 5 more hours. Please.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, I know we know that you guys all have places to go. So this will come to an end here. Just something I want to give you all as a takeaway to round us off here is that the relationship that we have with ourselves will always be the blueprint for every other relationship we have with people outside of ourselves. So whatever you do with yourself, however deeply you love yourself, you care for yourself, will always be how much you can also love and care for other people. And this also unfortunately goes down the other way. If you're really not in alignment with who you are, if you really don't like what you see when you look in the mirror, or when you have all of those hateful comments and thoughts towards yourself every day, then those are the kinds of friendships and relationships that you will attract in your life. So the key will always, always, always be to return to yourself and to check in with yourself first and see what's there, and to work on that relationship with yourself, right? Like put that, like Tyler said, put that best friend in your passenger seat. First of all, allow it to be there, and then build that beautiful relationship with yourself. And this will then have those beautiful ripple effects onto every other relationship that you have with yourself, with other people in your life, whether this is with friends and partners, kids, family members, anyone really. So with that, we thank you all so, so much for listening, tuning in, watching this. Let us know in the comments below, what are your number one thing that you are taking away from today? What are things that you are doing already to be your best friend, or what's something that you want to incorporate in the future from what we shared here today? Thank you so, so much. And this was another episode of Come As You Are, and we will see you next time again.
Thanks so much, everybody. And come and be friends with us. We want to be friends with you all. Come and be friends with us.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Come As You Are, the podcast. You can follow the show on Instagram at Kaya the Podcast, and on YouTube and Facebook by searching Kaya the Podcast. If you haven't already done so, please help us keep the conversations going by subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And be sure to join us next time for another deep conversation.